Yeah.
Week 4 was absolutely insane. Week 5 was even better. So what will Week 6 bring us? Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you our top 5 games of Week 6 of this college football season. And despite all the madness over these previous weeks, we're a perfect 10-0 in our Week 4 picks and our Week 5 picks. So let's see if our success can continue going into Week 6. And let's start in College Station as number 4 Florida takes on number 21 Texas A&M in a very intriguing cross-division matchup within the SEC. These two teams have only met 2 times since Texas A&M joined the SEC back in 2012. They met in 2012 with Florida winning that game at College Station, and they met back in 2017 with the Aggies going into the swamp and defeating the Gators 19-17. Let's start with Florida here, the visiting team. They are led by the Kyles, the Kyle duo. Kyle Trask, who many now have as a Heisman candidate. He wasn't back when the season began, but he is now, has thrown for 684 yards, 10 touchdowns, and just 1 interception in his 2 games against Ole Miss and South Carolina. What's even crazier is about 1/3 of those yards and 6 of those 10 touchdowns have gone to his tight end in Kyle Pitts, arguably the best tight end in all of college football. Texas A&M, they've been lackluster this season. Remember, they signed Jimbo Fisher to that $75 million contract, and what has he done in College Station? Nothing. They escaped Vanderbilt 17-12 a couple weeks ago. They just went on the road and lost by 28 to Alabama. And again, that was to be expected. I don't think anybody had Texas A&M winning that game. But losing by 28 and allowing 435 passing yards to Mac Jones, I don't think that was ideal, and I don't think that was expected either. So you look at this game, guys. Can A&M step it up any? They've been lackluster through 2 games. They're back at home now. They've got 2 SEC games under their belt. Can they step it up? We know that Florida is going to own this offensive edge. There's no doubt in my mind about it. But can Florida's defense step up? And for that matter, can Texas A&M's defense step up? The Gators right now are allowing 471 yards per game. They're allowing 143.5 rushing yards per game. Texas A&M, they're averaging 149 rushing yards per game, so they've got a very good rushing attack. They just put up 115 rushing yards against Alabama. If you rush for over 100 yards against Alabama, even in a losing effort, I don't care. That's still pretty dang impressive. So A&M's got a strong run game. I have not been impressed very much by Kellen Mond, who by this point in his career should be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. And right now he is not. So in this game, Florida has got to stop Texas A&M in the run game, and Texas A&M has got to find a way to slow down Dan Mullen's offense led by Kyle Trask. And in this game at College Station, I don't believe that can happen for the Aggies. I believe that Florida's defense makes just enough plays. A&M does not have an answer for Florida's offense, much like they didn't have an answer for Alabama's offense last week. Kellen Mond, to me, still not going to be able to make enough plays for the Aggies. Still has not been the guy that's going to go in there and win the big games for the Aggies. And Florida walks out of College Station with a win, 3-0, and still a top 5 team in the country. I want to move down to the ACC now between another top 20 matchup as number 19 Virginia Tech travels to Chapel Hill to take on the 8th-ranked North Carolina Tar Heels. This is going to be a fun one. This is going to be a really, really fun one. And it might not match last year's epic game between the Hokies and the Tar Heels, as Virginia Tech won that game 43-41 and 6 overtimes. 6 overtimes the Hokies won by 2, 43-41. But this game could be relatively similar when it comes to the amount of offense that is given here, the amount of points that are scored here. I just don't think we're going to see a bit of an overtime thriller. I want to start with Virginia Tech. They're coming off a bit of a subpar performance against Duke this past weekend. But you've got to cut the Hokies a little bit of slack here. In their season opening game against North Carolina State, Virginia Tech was down 23 players. 23 players due to coronavirus. And that's not to mention they were down a handful of coaches as well, including their defensive coordinator in Justin Hamilton. This past weekend against Duke, they win by 7, 38-31. Duke added a late field goal at the end, so really it was a 10-point victory. They were down 21 players and still down a handful of coaches, including defensive coordinator Justin Hamilton. So they're 2-0, defying the odds with all these players out, and absolutely deserve this top 20 ranking here. UNC, they're coming off a subpar performance as well, defeating Boston College on the road 26-22. Yes, they won by 4 points. Keep in mind that those extra 2 points came on an interception on the 2-point conversion. Boston College had a chance to tie it late in the game. UNC picked it off, returned it all the way, won by 4. Now, granted, the Tar Heels, give them a little slack. That game against Boston College was their first game in 3 weeks. So Virginia Tech, down because they're not healthy. North Carolina, a little bit rusty because they just simply have not played. So this, to me, is going to be a game between two teams and decided by who comes out hot, who comes out ready, wanting to win this game, and who is awake in this game, as this is an 11 o'clock kickoff on ABC. You've got to look at Virginia Tech's health. You got to look at North Carolina in terms of their fast start. They struggled against Syracuse. They struggled against Boston College. But I look at a few key numbers here, and that is North Carolina's defense against this Virginia Tech offense. Virginia Tech is doing a great job of running the football. They've got that Kansas transfer running back in Khalil Herbert doing a great job with the Hokies. Already has 312 yards and 3 touchdowns in just 2 games. But North Carolina is allowing just 54 rushing yards per game. That was with David Bailey at Boston College, pretty good running back there. And of course Syracuse, who I know has struggled mightily offensively, but held them to 6 points, and is allowing just 54 rushing yards per game. I also look at Virginia Tech's defense, not too bad themselves, but they're allowing over 250 passing yards per game. North Carolina's putting up 264 passing yards per game, of course led by Sam Howell, who's had a bit of a rough start to his sophomore campaign, but I think is really going to pick it up here against the Hokies. Across the board, North Carolina to me is too balanced offensively, and their defense is still a unit that I think is severely underrated. And in a game that I think goes into the 30s, I think this game can get into the 30s, I think it's the Tar Heels that come away with the win. And by the end of the weekend, guys, when the new poll comes out, North Carolina could be a top 7 team going into week 7. We knew they had some very high expectations. We knew they were going to be good, but I don't know if anybody saw this coming. We then move down to the Big 12, SEC, ACC. Let's go over to the Big 12 for the Red River letdown. Not the Red River Showdown, the Red River Shootout, the Red River Rivalry, the Red River letdown. Because this was a game that everybody had circled on their calendars back when the season was about to start. And now we've got a game between the 22nd ranked Texas Longhorns and an unranked Oklahoma team? An unranked Oklahoma team? A 1-2 Oklahoma? It blows my mind. This is a team that has made, 3 straight college football playoff appearances? There's no way they're getting in now. They've lost back-to-back games against Kansas State and now Iowa State. And this game, what many thought would be crucial in determining the top 2 teams in the Big 12 back in the preseason, now basically means nothing. It's still a big rivalry game, though, and we do want to address it. A few key stats here. This is just the 3rd time in the last 20 seasons that both Oklahoma and Texas enter this game coming off a loss. The previous 2 times were in 2007 and in 2014. So we're averaging about 7 years here that we see Oklahoma and Texas entering this game off a loss. So in 2027, be prepared. We might be in for a similar scenario. Texas, back in 1996, was 2-2 when they defeated a 2-3 Oklahoma team 27-24. That was probably the last time this was such a lackluster game between these 2 Big 12 powers. To me, this is a bigger game for Texas. They are only a 1-loss team, coming off that loss to TCU. Oklahoma It's a big game for them because they need to get back on track. Could you imagine if the Sooners started 1-3 after starting the season at number 3 in the country? I look at these offenses here. You could see a shootout here, so maybe we'll get back to that Red River Shoodout name. Texas averaging 51 points per game, Oklahoma averaging 37.7 points per game, and each team averaging over 500 yards per game. So great performances across the board from both teams. Both defenses, absolutely horrible. Oklahoma cannot take the ball away through 3 games. They've only created 2 turnovers. Texas can't stop anybody, allowing over 250 passing yards per game and over 128 rushing yards per game. So, in a game like this, you're going to see some points scored. Whose defense is going to step up and make enough plays? Which defense is going to be able to create some turnovers and then capitalize off of those turnovers? Oklahoma has won 4 of the last 5 games against Texas, including a Big 12 championship back in 2018. None of that's going to matter on Saturday because I'm picking the Longhorns to win this game. I think this game comes down to quarterback play and defense. Oddly enough, I like Texas' defense just a little bit more, despite the poor performances as of late, and I certainly like Sam Ehlinger a lot better than Spencer Rattler right now. Ehlinger throwing for 14 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, 924 yards in just 3 games for the Longhorns. Rattler, too many interceptions, too many costly interceptions. 3 against Kansas State, the game-ending one last week against Iowa State. Give me Ehlinger, Tom Herman, and the Longhorns to win this game and keep their Big 12 title hopes alive. They only have 1 conference loss. It's still a game that I think is bigger for the Longhorns than it is for Oklahoma. Moving on down, back to the SEC, let's talk Tennessee and Georgia. Tennessee and Georgia, this is huge for the SEC East standings. You know, a lot of people thought Kentucky could contend for a top spot, could contend and be considered one of those top 3 teams in the SEC East this year. After their 0-2 start, they're out. It's Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. Not necessarily in that order. But this is an opportunity for one of these teams to gain a little separation from each other. Georgia has won the last 3 games, though, against the Volunteers by at least 26 points. 26 points, at least, Georgia has beaten Tennessee. The average margin of victory, the average score for Georgia against the Volunteers is 41-13 over the past 3 seasons. And I don't want to disrespect Tennessee at all. The Volunteers, what they've done under Jeremy Pruitt, should not be overlooked. They're riding an 8-game winning streak coming into this game. They are 2-0 on the season, escaping South Carolina in Week 1 and then taking down Missouri, a struggling Missouri team, last week, 35-12. Georgia, on the other hand, though, they've got a much more impressive victory to their name, taking down what was then number 7 Auburn, taking them down 27-6, where they outgained the Tigers by 226 yards. And keep in mind, Stetson Bennett was their quarterback, and he will certainly be the quarterback against the Volunteers on Saturday. Bennett playing extremely well, 240 yards and a touchdown against Auburn. Keep going with him. Until he shows Kirby Smart that he's incapable of doing the quarterback duties, don't change it. Don't change what's working. He came in, led the team to victory over Arkansas, came in, played great against Auburn, led the team to victory against the Tigers. Why not against Tennessee? We know Georgia's defense is the best in the country. And if Tennessee wants to win this game, they're going to have to get creative to exploit some weaknesses against this Georgia defense. And they're certainly going to have to win this game through the air with Jarrett Garantano. Because while we know that Tennessee has a great offensive line, while we know that Tennessee has some pretty good running backs and guys like Eric Gray and Ty Chandler, Georgia is allowing just 58 rushing yards per game. Tennessee, and for that matter, I will say I don't think anybody in the country can beat Georgia by running the ball. You've got to air it out. And even then, it's extremely difficult. Garantano has impressed me. Through 2 games, he's thrown for 449 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I think you're going to see the Jarrett Garantano of old in this game in Athens. I just don't see any way Tennessee storms in here and takes down Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs. While I don't think this game's decided by 26 points again, while I think Tennessee certainly keeps it a little bit closer, I do think their 8-game winning streak comes to an end. I don't think Garantano has what it takes to lead the Volunteers to victory on the road against the 3rd-ranked team in the country in this defense. So Tennessee's losing streak comes to an end on Saturday, and Georgia remains undefeated, which means that matchup between the Dogs and the Gators, depending on what happens with Florida up until that point, will most likely decide who wins the SEC East. And then finally, the game of the week. It's going to be the game of the week, at least for us. Number 7 Miami at number 1 Clemson. And I tell you what, if this game was at Miami, I think there would be a lot of people siding with the Hurricanes, just pulling for that pesky upset game, that potential upset game to take down the number 1 team in the country, if it were in Miami. But it's not. It's in Clemson. These two teams have not met since 2017 when Clemson won 38-3 over the Hurricanes in the ACC championship game. Obviously, a lot has changed since then for both teams. But I would say more so for Miami than Clemson, because Miami hasn't been this highly ranked since 2017. Since they were number 2 in the country at one point. Of course, they lost to Pittsburgh, still made the title game, and then collapsed for the rest of the season. But they are back. I will say that I think, is getting back. If they beat Clemson, they're absolutely back. All the credit in the world to Rhett Lashley and Manny Diaz for what they're doing and trying to rebuild the U. They're averaging 43.3 points per game. They're very balanced, over 260 passing yards per game and over 230 rushing yards per game. The offense had a major overhaul, and you're seeing it pay dividends here. De'Aaron King, another major reason for this Miami team doing so well. The transfer quarterback from Houston, already thrown for 736 yards and 6 touchdowns, while adding over 150 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground as well. He's going to give Clemson a tough test here. There's no doubt in my mind. And there's no doubt in my mind that Rhett Lashley is going to get creative. Just like Tennessee needs to do against Georgia, Miami's going to get creative to try to score some points against this very stingy Clemson defense that's allowing just 12 points per game. But we know who Clemson has. They've got the best quarterback in the country in Trevor Lawrence. They have arguably the best running back in the country in Travis Etienne. And even though we know that Clemson lost some huge wide receivers, they've still got Amari Rodgers. They've still got Joseph Nagata. They've got some really big talent on offense, and they're still averaging over 40 points per game themselves. 42.3 points per game to be exact. This Miami offense will without a doubt be the toughest test that Clemson has seen this season. Miami will give Clemson their toughest test this season, but conversely, Clemson's defense will be the toughest that Miami's offense has faced. So what's going to give here? Will Miami be able to exploit some weaknesses and hang in this game until the fourth quarter? And if they do, there's a very good chance they pull off this upset, because they know they're going in as major underdogs. But if Miami's hanging around in the fourth quarter, they're going to have a lot of momentum and they're going to start to believe. Or is Clemson going to shut down De'Aaron King, shut down this Miami offense, and will Miami's defense, which has been lackluster at times, allowing a lot of yards to Louisville, a lot of points to Louisville as well, are they going to collapse and allow Clemson to run away with this game, much like they have in the previous few meetings? Here's the key in this one. Miami's been very balanced, as we've mentioned. De'Aaron King, Cameron Harris. They've been a deadly 1-2 punch. Cameron Harris is going to be taken away in this game. Clemson's allowing just 90 rushing yards per game this season. Don't expect Miami to go above that. I don't think De'Aaron King can do this solely by himself. Dabo Swinney and his squad is going to be prepared to shut down De'Aaron King in terms of the mobility, and it's going to force King to win this game solely through the pocket, which he can do. We know he's a talented passer. I'm not saying he can't make the throws, but I'm saying that he can't do that all night. Someone's got to come in there and help him. And if Clemson takes away Cameron Harris and takes away the mobility and really shortens and condenses Rhett Lashley's playbook to where it's not as wide open and not as creative, Clemson will run away with this game. I don't think it's a massive blowout, but I do think Clemson wins relatively comfortably. The U, don't worry. You're not expected to win this game. You're still going to be a top 15 team when it's all said and done, and you're still going to be in store for a fantastic season. Like we mentioned with Alabama, like we've mentioned with Georgia, not many teams can go on the road and steal these wins here. Manny Diaz and his squad are going to put up a heck of a fight, but Dabo Swinney and the Tigers are going to get the job done in Death Valley. So there you have it, guys. We've got some fantastic matchups yet again in Week 6. 4 big ranked versus ranked matchups here. Not only will they shape the national stage, but they're going to shape the individual conference races as well. And like we mentioned in our AP Top 25 video, yeah, you're going to see 4 Top 25 teams lose here. But you're certainly going to see more than that by the time Saturday is said and done. These are just the top 5 games. There are plenty of other great games coming your way this college football Saturday. So make sure you don't miss any of them. Don't miss these 5. Don't miss any of the others. And of course, stay tuned right here at the Gridiron Expert for some Game of the Week analysis, more in-depth analysis on 2 of these games, one coming out on Wednesday and one coming out on Friday. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share these videos, and also check out everything down in the description below, whether it be our expert picks, whether it be our newsletter, or our Patreon account. All of that content and support is greatly appreciated and stuff that you do not want to miss. So make sure to check it all out right down there in the description. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.